That's why people take advantage.
Calling to order the regular meeting of the Inland Valley Development Agency on this June 13, 2018. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Certainly. Please state your name for the record. From the City of Colton,
Mayor De La Rosa.
Isaac Suchel.
thank you. City of Loma Linda,
Elvie Popescu.
thank you. County of San Bernardino, 5th District,
Josie Gonzalez.
thank you. And from the City of San Bernardino,
Kerry Davis.
Virginia Marquez.
For the time being, Jim Mulvihill.
thank you very much.
All right. And legal counsel, we have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
All right, and I would like to introduce a gentleman that I've known for a very long time who is sitting in for Michael today. Mr. John Myro.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, we're glad to have you. All right, Mr. Burrows, will we be having closed session today?
We will, and if it pleases the board, I would like to note one correction for the record. The negotiating parties listed under closed session, item E, should read Chairperson Josie Gonzalez, Vice Chair Kerry Davis, and Member Isaac Suchel. That was the ad hoc committee that was designated for that. So we just, the clerks made note. I just wanted to put that on the record.
All right, thank you very much. With that said, is there anyone here from the public wishing to come forward and speak on an item in closed session? Seeing no one at this time, we will recess to closed session. All right. Any reportable action from closed session, legal counsel?
No, there is no reportable action.
All right, calling to order the open session. This time, let's just say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mayor Del Rosa, would you lead us? Thank you very much. Any items to be added or deleted from the agenda, Mr. Burrows?
No items.
All right. Any conflict of interest to be declared at this time?
Yes, item number 8.
Item number 8 for Mayor Davis. Anyone else? All right. We will then move on to any informational items.
I will defer informational items given the hour and understand that we do have some schedule impacts here. So, it is in the packet and happy to answer questions for those that may have them in the future.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would consider, yes, sir? On number 8? Number 8 for Councilmember Charette. Anyone else? All right, then moving on to the consent calendar. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Was that Councilmember Sucho? And a second from Mayor De La Rosa?
Supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Through the chair, I had one question on item 2.
On item number 2,
It's packet page 20.
right?
The development,
Yes, sir.
the 2.3 million square feet, what's the period of time that covers?
So these are a span of projects over roughly 18 months
18
in duration of construction time.
Thank you.
Any other
Including up
questions?
till this month or
It would have been last month.
through May?
Yeah, so Trader Joe's, as you saw in your last presentation, was just finished last month.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? At this time, I have a second, I have a motion, and I have a second. Any additional comments? Any opposition? Hearing none, the consent calendar is approved. Moving on to item number 6, which is to consider and adopt the Inland Valley Development Agency budget for the fiscal year 2018-2019. Mr. Garay.
Yes, thank you. Item number 6, staff report for the
proposed budget for the Inland Valley Development Agency, successor agency.
Thank you, sir.
We go to page 54, beginning of the slides. This is for the fiscal year 2018-19. Following page, page 55, shows the annual budget structure. It is the same as it was last year, with the tax proceeds incoming into the IVDA for successor agency or as successor agency, and then depending on the nature of the funds, going into the RORF and the capital projects fund under this budget. Going on to page 56, we have, as we had last year, a pie chart indicating the relative size and amounts for the budget sources for the year. And these are projected budget revenue sources. You will see the restricted cash for projects is at $820,000. The RPTTF revenue is at $20,230,000, and I will explain those numbers in detail on the following pages. We go to page 57. You'll see another pie chart, and this one is for the uses of these funds, again, under the successor agency budget. Capital projects, mainly an outflow at this point, same number as the inflow at $820,000, and the RORF is similarly estimated at the same amount as the input. Going on to page 58, you'll see a worksheet. It's entitled All Funds Combined for the Successor Agency, and the budget is reflected on here for 2018-19. You'll see the revenues up on top, and they're basically into three categories. These follow and parallel the pie charts in terms of the amounts, but now you will see them in this format that shows them against the expenditures for the year. Receipts, again, from RPTTF is at $20 million. Restricted cash for capital projects is $820,000, and then the total for the year for the successor agency is $21,051,000. Following that, we have the expenditure items, and here are listed the uses of the funds or the revenues shown on top. The bigger items are account number 5031310. These are the bonds, tax exempt. This is interest only. The other one is $9,200,000, account number 50315. This is the interest expense on the taxable bonds. Again, interest only for the year. Now, beginning in September of 2018, the interest expense tabs line will begin to include principal. The one above that, the tax exempt, the Series A, will not. It will be interest only until 2033. So we have we go to page 59. This breaks down the RORF further. This goes back to, again, the structure of the budget. This is one of the two items listed at the bottom of the previous slide. And it shows the RORF sources of income as well as its outflow. Again, you will see the Series A and B bonds payments, interest only for the year. The bottom line, the Subsera payments, the transfer costs at $3.2 million will also be expended in the 18-19 fiscal year. We have a few other smaller items, but those are the big ones, major ones. Does anyone have any questions on the RORF fund?
Any questions, board members?
Okay. Going on to
I just have one question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
In regards to the Subsera payments,
Yes.
does this bring us into a zero balance, or do we still have additional funding we're going to owe?
Zero balance. It'll be closure.
Very good. So we won't see this again after?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Continue.
The next fund under the successor agency is the Capital Projects Fund. And as noted in the earlier pie chart, we have $820,000 coming in, or at least being named as sources for the revenue for this, and this is for the Tippecanoe project. Any questions on the Capital Projects Fund or the successor agency?
Any questions, board members? No.
All right.
No questions.
Going on to page 61, we break down the expenses. We continue to break down the projected budget as well as compare them with the current year, fiscal year 17-18 budget and actual amounts for the year. This is provided to give you an idea of what the last year's or the prior year's or this year's, I'm sorry, and the next year's budget compare. We show again, we have not changed the budget structure, so these accounts are the same as they were in the prior year. It makes it easy for comparison between the 2 years. And we're showing the revenue sources again, as well as the expenses from the current fiscal year as compared to what we are proposing for the next budget year. And on page 61 is the combination of the two funds, the RORF and the Capital Projects Fund. If we go on to page 62, this is just the RORF fund. And again, the budget, the last column on this page is the budget for the next fiscal year. The first 4 columns is information regarding the actual and the budget and the over and under amounts, as well as the percentages of those differences. This is for the RORF. Does anyone have any questions on this sheet?
Any questions, board members? I'm just looking, I myself am just looking over here, see if I see anything that is different from last year. I
Yes.
see that there are some revenues that are present that weren't there before.
Well, we still have the 3 categories of revenue overall.
Right.
The receipts from RPTTF funding and the restricted cash for the Tippecanoe project, as well as some interest income earned.
Very good.
We are, again, estimating similar amounts, except for the interest, we're estimating a little bit less.
So the bond payment goes up this year, and because of that, the administration allowance is a percentage of the total funds. That's part of the factor in the increase.
All right, and then I'm also looking at the cash reserve.
Yes. Under the overall or combined of the 2 funds, the cash balance at the end of the day, at the end of the fiscal year, is about $6,500.
All right. Any questions, board members? Hearing none?
Okay, and then the page on, I'm sorry, the page 63 reflects the capital projects fund. It's pretty much an in and out in terms of the revenues and the uses of this fund. Again, Tippecanoe.
Yep, quite simple there. Any questions? Hearing none. At this time, was there anything else you wanted to add in closing?
No, ma'am.
All right. Then I bring it back before this board. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Move the successor agency budget.
Pardon me?
I move the successor agency budget.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any comments? Any opposition? Hearing none, item number 6 is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Garay.
Through the chair,
Mayor?
I need to excuse myself for another meeting.
All right,
Excuse me.
before you go, Mike, is there anything on the agenda that I need to move up now that absolutely needs to get approved? Or that we need to act on?
Budget after that? We're okay on budget form? Conflict? Yeah, we're okay.
We're okay? All right,
All right, thank you.
most welcome. Quickly moving on to item number 7, which is to consider and adopt the Inland Valley Development Agency Joint Powers Authority budget for fiscal year 2018-19. Mr. Garay, once again.
Thank you. Staff recommends that the Joint Powers Authority, JPA, budget for fiscal year 2018-19 be approved. The details follow. On page 66, we start with the slides again, and this is for the Joint Powers Authority, the JPA. The setup is similar in terms of slide construction as the last one. If we go to page 67, you'll see the annual budget structure for the JPA. Now, this has not changed from last year or the current year, 17-18 budget structure. We show the sources as being tax proceeds from IVDA, the successor agency, lease revenue and other sources as a result of operations, and bond proceeds and grants funds. All these flow into the JPA entity, and from there, they get split out into several other funds as noted on the bottom of the page: the sewer fund, general fund, debt service fund, capital projects fund, the project property management fund, as well as the BRORF, which stands for Base Reuse Obligation Reserve Fund, by the way. Going on to page 68, we have an overview of the items on the 18-19 budget. We have run, as we had in the prior year, the budget on a conservative basis. The debt service fund is retained. However, IVDA, JPA currently carries no debt, zero. The proposed general fund balance retains a $500,000 economic development reserve, and we'll go into more detail in a moment. And the proposed capital projects fund includes $18.5 million for the listed projects, as you see again on page 68, along with the associated projected costs for those projects. The BRORF continues to maintain retain a $4.1 million balance after all of this. Going on to page 69, you will see another pie chart. This is for 18-19 JPA budget, and these are the sources of revenues for use in the operation of the IVDA JPA for the year. You'll see that we have a few more funds than we did with the successor agency, to include the property management fund, general fund, along with those amounts, water sewer fund, capital projects fund, and BRORF. The pie chart is here to show you the relative size of the fund pieces and give you an idea of how it all fit together. Going on to page 70, the next page, a pie chart one more time, and this is with regard or reflects the uses of the funds that are to be received for the year. And these are broken down, as was in the budget structure chart, into these various funds: property management, BRORF, general fund, water sewer fund, and capital projects fund. Moving on to page 71 through 73, this is one worksheet, or at least one listing of the revenues to be projected to be received for the year 18-19, as well as the expenditures associated with the operations of the JPA. The revenue side, up on top, includes goods movement, and I'll go through the major amounts here: goods movements, transfers from BRORF, reimbursement agreements. There's two of them, one from the Water District and the other one the specific plans. We also have some lease revenue coming in, and what was the other one? Oh, a receivable from Sabia's administrative. The revenues projected for the 18-19 budget total to about $17.9 million for the 12 months from these various sources. Moving further down the list, we begin to take a look at the expenses for the year. The dominant expenditures are salaries and some projects: Mountain View 3rd and 5th, the interchange, and again the Hangar 795 expenditures, and the Tippecanoe project on page 72. You'll see that they're in the millions of dollars. Now again, this worksheet, these 3 pages reflect the roll-up of all the funds combined. So what you're looking at is kind of a high-level view of all the revenues and expenditures for the year. Going on to page 74, we start getting the detail. These are the funds that I've mentioned, both on the budget structure chart as well as the pie charts. We start off with the general fund. And in the general fund, you'll see, again, a listing of revenues. The big items are larger amounts are for transfer from BRORF. Again, the reimbursement agreement from the Water District and the specific plans, notably from the Water District and the City of Highland for $150,000. We have listed the Water District reimbursement agreement at almost $3.9 million at this point. Under the general fund, the revenues total to $7.5 million. Following that, we have the expenses listed with the dominant expenditure amounts being salaries one more time, some insurance at $175,000, and then the following page on page 75, it wraps up this general fund with a total expenditures of $4.3 million. Excuse me. When taken against the revenues for the that were listed on the previous page, on page 74, we net out at about $3.2 million on the plus side for revenues over expenditures. Again, on page 75, you'll see that number as well as the cash on hand beginning and the cash on hand ending. So what we did was we added the revenues over expenditures, the net amount against the cash on hand beginning. We end up with a balance of almost $4.9 million at the end of the fiscal year under the general fund. Any questions on the general fund revenues or expenditures?
So you're netting out the expenses on page 73, the negative of $8,613,000. You're netting that out at the end, correct?
I'm sorry, on page 73?
73, I see a negative of $8 million.
Oh, no, that is the combined, all the funds. But you will see as we go along in each of the specific funds, there's a cash balance that will be reflected.
Okay.
And we started off with general fund.
Okay.
And now these are specific funds. We're going into detail. Under the general fund, you'll see on page 75 that we do, at least in this fund, end up with a $4.9 million cash balance.
Got it.
We did not do that on the overall agency on the previous pages.
And did the 4.855 increase?
That is the net increase for the year. This is the balance that we're projecting in the budget for the June 30th, 2019
Right, and
day.
did that increase from last year?
Yes, it did, because for at least the general fund, the cash on hand was $1.7 million.
Right.
So we're adding the net of revenues over expenditures for the general fund of $3.155 million to the 1.7, coming up at the end of the year with 4.8.
Very good, and I just wanted to make sure that got into the record. I'm very glad to see that. It's truly an opportunity for us to perhaps become a bit optimistic for growth. Thank you. Go ahead.
You're welcome. Moving on to page 76, we have the Water and Sewer Fund. It's a rather small fund. We have just a couple of revenue sources, lease and sewer consumption fees. And that totals up to $215,000. We have a few charges against that, including a transfer of $100,000 to the general fund. Nevertheless, we still end up with net income of about $4,000 on this one. And again, the cash balance at the beginning of this year, in other words, July 1st, next month, we'll have $100,000 at $4,000, and then we end up at June 30th, 2019 with $104.
All right, we'll take
Any
every
questions
little bit
on
we can
this
get.
fund?
All right, any questions?
It is a dirty job.
Yep. Yeah, right. Go ahead. Thank you.
Going on to page 77, Capital Projects Fund. Again, we list the revenues at the top, and the big sources are the general fund at $1 million, and the goods movement reimbursement from Sandbag at $5 million, a little over $5 million, and then the transfer in from BRORF of $500,000 to help fund this particular Capital Projects Fund. The total sources total to about $7.8 million for the total revenues. Below that, again, are the expenditures for this fund, and you will see a list pretty much of the projects, capital projects, and tenant improvements that we budgeted for the year. The major items are Mountain View at $10.6 million, Third and Fifth at 1.8, Hangar 795 at $3 million, and the Tippecanoe Avenue at $1 million. Now,
On
We-
that, I will just venture to say on your line item 40051, where it's got the goods movement reimbursement from Sandbag.
Yes.
Perhaps at some point, we might consider changing that to SBCTA.
SBCTA, good
since
point.
oh,
they
yes,
changed
yes,
their name.
absolutely.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Now, in this one, you'll see a negative number on the bottom, revenues after expenditures have been taken out, of about $10,730,000. However, we have cash on hand beginning of more than that, $10,887,000. This leaves us a projected budgeted cash balance of $156,000 at June 30th, 2019.
All right,
Do we have any
we'll take it.
questions on this fund?
We'll take it. Any questions? Hearing none, please proceed.
Page 78, BRORF. We have on the revenue side, or sources of revenue or income, we have several transfer from Property Management Fund, $209,000, receivable from Sabia for Hangar 795, $180,000, and interest income projected at $6,000 for the 18-19 fiscal year, total about $396,000 in revenues. Against that, we have transfers to the Capital Projects Fund, $500,000, and transfer to the General Fund of $1 million. That leaves us with a negative $1.1 million for the flow of cash. However, again, we have a beginning balance as of July 1st of this year, next month, 5.2, and we are projecting a budgeted cash on hand balance at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2019, of $4,095,000.
Very good.
Any questions on this fund?
No questions. Proceed.
Moving on to page 79. Now, this page shows a combined financial information on the property management funds that we have in IVDA JPA. This gives you kind of an overview of all the funds combined under property management, and we're showing revenues for the budgeted year of $1.9 million. It comes mostly from lease revenue and some electrical usage charges for the year. Again, below that, we have a listing of the expenditures that apply to property management. We have nothing really major. The big one is transfer to general fund at the bottom. You'll see that of $500,000, transfers to Capital Projects Fund of $300,000, and transfers back to BRORF of $209,000. You just saw that a minute ago on that fund. Total expenditures or uses for the year is projected at $1.8 million. When applied against the projected revenues, we get $62,000 on the plus side. Adding that to the beginning cash balance on hand at the beginning of that fiscal year of $2.3 million, we end up with a positive cash on hand at the end of the year of $2.36 million. Are there any questions on this combined statement? I will get into the detail here in a second.
Any questions? Hearing none, proceed.
Okay, page 80. This is the first of the property management funds, DFAS Building 1, and we have lease revenue at $1.2 million from our tenants, CRC. We got a couple of attorneys' office in the county of San Bernardino as sources. Against this, we have a number of expenses, and they're basically the normal operating expenses of a building: security, janitorial, refuse, utilities, and some professional services, and some salary being allocated to this fund. Total expenditures against the 1.2 is $421,500, leaving us with a balance of $780,944 on the plus side. Are there any questions on the DFAS Building 1 fund?
Any questions? Hearing none, proceed.
Page 81, Property Management Fund, Building 477. Lease revenue, this is, I believe, the cell tower, and so we get revenues of about $56,000 against that. We've applied a few expenses against that number, leaving us on the plus side of $53,000, $75,000 for the year projected. Are there any questions on this, on the Building 477 fund?
Any questions? Hearing none, proceed.
Page 82, excuse me, Building 48. Lease revenue and lease events revenue at $37,214 for the year projected. Again, against the revenue budgeted, we have expenditures that are mostly, once again, operating expenses of a building, and to include some salary numbers and janitorial and security. Those are the bigger items.
All right.
Nothing really out of the ordinary here.
Nope. Any questions?
Any questions on this fund? We're having a little bit of a negative number on
Mayor?
this one.
Yeah, I was wondering why even the janitors cost more than your entire revenue.
It's this building, so it's a cost center, and we don't charge ourselves
I see.
We should.
much.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should.
Wow. Yeah, maybe we should consider.
And we allocate to Sabia part of that, too.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Page 83, Building 58. Rebarber and I believe Brew Rebellion. Lease revenue and electrical usage charges at $124,000. Once again, the normal or operating expenses for running that particular building for those two tenants. It leaves us with a net income of $55,000 projected for the year. Any questions on Building 58?
Seeing none, proceed.
Page 84, Streets, Roads, and Parkings. This particular property management fund, we're projecting to receive about $167,000. This is for the parking revenue that you see all these vehicles out here on the airport area. And then the expenditures associated with that. And it includes transfers to the Capital Projects Fund of $300,000, as well as transfers to General Fund of $500,000. That leaves us with a negative balance of about $802,000 for the year.
Wow. So how are we managing this?
If we did not take out the Capital Projects transfer or the General Fund transfer, it would come out to zero. So we're just moving the money to other funds. And that was reflected earlier.
All
This
right.
is the only general revenue category in the sub-fund, so that's where they could structurally place it. That's why.
All right. Any questions? All right. Proceed.
Thank you. Page 85. The General Aviation Hangar under the Property Management Fund category. Lease revenue of the hangars coming in at estimated $210,000 for the year, and we're transferring the entire amount over to BRORF, leaving us with a zero balance, with a zero net effect.
So this is payback for the monies we advanced to build GA hangars on the airport side.
Yes,
Right.
earlier.
All right. Proceed.
Any questions on the GA hangars? Okay, page 86, I believe. Parcel B-1C, East Land under the property management category, lease revenue at $59,000, no expenses associated with it.
All right. Any questions? Go ahead.
Page 87, DFAS Building 2. Again, projected lease revenue at $50,000. We have budgeted $10,000 for repairs and maintenance for that building for the year, leaving us with a projected net income of $40,000 on DFAS Building 2.
All right.
That wraps up the specific detail on the property management funds. Following on page 88, as was before on the successor agency, we are showing the 2018-19 budget along with the 17-18 actual and budgeted amounts along with their percentage differences for comparison. We didn't change any accounts, so the comparison's pretty good. I mean, it's
Anything
pretty
out of the
straightforward.
ordinary that you have seen that we need to pay attention to?
No.
All right. All right, proceed.
This breakdown of the projection, and these are all the funds, by the way, continues, and there's quite a bit of information on here, but it does address the individual accounts, the general fund on page 91, the water and sewer fund on page 93, the capital projects fund on page 94, the BRORF on page 95, and the property management fund combined on page 96, along with the individual property management accounts that I had just gone through on the budget side.
Right.
And that continues. That information continues through page 104 at the end of the staff report.
All right, board members, any questions, any concerns you might have? Mayor?
These timelines for each year are July 1 to June 30?
Yes, it's the fiscal year, July 1st through June 30th.
Yeah, it's just listed as June 1.
Well, the actual information is not available. It was only available through June 1st, so we
So
closed.
is it year-to-date, but is it
Yes.
annualized?
Yeah,
For
it's
the budget?
year-to-date at this point. On the actual budget, it's annualized.
All right. Board members, any questions, any comments? Mr. Burrows, do you see this budget as a budget that it has hope written on the horizon?
It is starting to, thankfully. We've stayed lean and mean with your support, and we're starting to see some growth out there, hitting $6.9 billion in total assessed valuation, and 14.2 million square feet has given us a few more resources, and that'll allow us to effectuate some additional plans as you've directed.
Absolutely. All right. Then at this time, if there are no questions, there's no opposition, I would entertain a motion on this item.
I move the Joint Powers Authority budget.
I have a
Second.
motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any comments? Any opposition? Then item number 7 is approved. Moving quickly, item number 8, which is to approve certain consultant contracts for fiscal, yes, sir? You need to excuse yourself. All right, Madam Clerk, if you will reflect that on the record, which is to approve certain consultant contracts for fiscal year 2018-19. Mr. Garay, once again.
Thank you. Staff recommends approving certain consultant contracts for the next fiscal year 18-19. If you look on page 106, you will see a summary listing of all the contracts that we are proposing be approved, or at least.
I'd like to move item number 8.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any opposition? Hearing none, it is so ordered, and I see who's at the top of that list. I like that. Thank you for your service.
I'd like to recommend items 9 and 10 be brought back at the next meeting.
That would be appropriate. I would just want to ask, on the IVDA website, if the members could direct your attention to the strategic plan update. Our clerk of the board team has done some pretty creative work here. There's a brand-new story map, and we'd like you to peruse that in the course of the coming weeks, and we'll come back and present it to you at the next meeting.
That would be nice. I apologize, we are all under a bit of a time crunch. So at this time, I would take that you have just made a motion to continue items 9 and 10. Is there a
I
second?
think that's 8 and 9.
Oh, 8 and 9, no.
No, I'm sorry, 9 and 10.
9 and 10. And I have a second. Is there any opposition? Hearing none is so ordered. At this time, is there anyone from the public wishing to come forward to speak on an item that is on or off the agenda? Seeing no one come forward, I would close the public comment portion of this meeting, bring it back before this board. Members, any comments? If not, this meeting is adjourned to our next scheduled meeting on Wednesday, July 11th, 2018. Thank you so very much. Appreciate all of you staying and working it out. Thanks.